what is inside of a woman? It's a fetus? Is it living?
Oh, yep, worse than that. But before we do, I will say one thing in favor of these morons, and that is, yes, the student loan system in America is indeed very predatory and very broken. However, not for the reasons that these clowns keep mentioning, but we'll cover this in more detail as we go along. And this is also where my sympathy for them ends, because even though they want everybody in the country to be understanding and vote for student loan forgiveness,
and maybe we need to help some people get where they're going sometimes in order to build a society that works for everyone. If your tax dollars did pay for student loans, it's because you're investing in society. A rising tide lifts all boats.
those same people asking for your sympathy are total assholes. Yeah.
That keep saying, why should my tax dollars pay for other people's student loans? One, go yourself. We move to places that other people like us are and like them aren't. And all the mediocre white men in my comment section are either too dumb or too poor to go to college.
This is what a bachelor in brain rot will get you, and it's the best example that college and university are not only making people dumber these days, but also just terrible members of society as well. Now, these people signed up for massive amounts of loans, but they don't even understand the basic concept of how interest works.
Personally, I've been paying on my...
It's even crazier is most of the degrees they're going for in college are absolutely irrelevant in the real world. There are no jobs for a bunch of those social degrees, those theoretical degrees, the women's studies, the gender history degrees, all that slop shit, brain rot. All of that is just designed to take your money. You're fucking cooked. And with the advent of AI now, that's replacing everybody's jobs at a really fast rate. Just wait. The next few years are going to be fireworks. Companies are already building on the back end, completely integrating these AI systems that will wipe away all the cubicle jobs. They're being built right now. They're building in-house, backdoor, offline AI systems with these LLM models, amongst other apps that are all integrated to provide the customer with a seamless experience with somebody that could always work, always answer, always have the right answer, available 24/7, and cost them zero or just the initial startup, but works in perpetuity, and whatever electricity costs are. Surely, that's much cheaper than entire departments of human beings that all need salaries and health care and all this other shit. It's over, dude. It's over. These women, AI will affect women the most. Men will get by. They'll go into trades. They see the tides changing. They'll hustle. They'll create their own side businesses. They'll do whatever it takes to survive. Men are built for that kind of shit. But women depend on the system. It's women that are asking a lot of their loans to be forgiven for the stupid degrees that they've gotten. In the system, they're going to get crushed. The overbearing pressure on their shoulders from their stupidity, the consequences of their actions will come home to roost in the next couple of years. No, voting blue, voting Democrat, voting progressive is not going to get your fucking decisions erased. You're going to have to deal with the consequences of your actions. It's that simple.
A student loan for over 10 years, consistently, every single month, hundreds and hundreds of dollars. I have been paying for 10 years. The grand total is I have paid $120,000, and I still owe 76. I think I might be...
When you only make interest payments, you never pay the principal. The consequence of never paying the principal of a loan means you're still earning interest off of that principal. You have to pay down the principal, even if it's $5. I mean, preferably you want it to be 50, 500, 5,000, whatever. You want to put a dent in it. There's a reason people make 2 house payments a month. Not everybody, but you pay your monthly payment at the beginning of the month. Then, when you're able, you do everything you can to make a second payment within that 25-day period to knock the principal down so that the accrued interest starts shrinking.
Late to the game learning about that.
See, this right here is what you see a lot on TikTok, with thousands of people complaining that their student loans keep increasing or haven't gone down an inch. Imagine going to college, getting a 4-year degree, or 6-year, or even becoming a PhD. Imagine the brain rot that you don't even know something as simple as if you make the minimum payments, you're only covering the interest.
and your principal keeps ballooning. It's like they don't know about, forbearance or deferment that most of these people are probably on. Or this is what they don't tell you when they say, like, I've been paying for 10 years and I still have 70K. That's because you're on an income-driven repayment plan. They don't talk about that, though, do they? So the minimum payments, this is what I was talking about, because usually the minimum payment, if you're not on an income,
most people get a conventional mortgage for 30 years. They go and they get a home for, easy numbers, $100,000 at 7%. You do your escrow, down payment, insurance, property taxes, closing costs, all that wonderful stuff. When I bought my first house, it was, $750 or something like that a month. After a few years of owning it, I refinanced it, cashed out a bunch of the equity, and I made interest-only payments. I was happy because I'd gone back to school. My mortgage payment was, with taxes and insurance, maybe $350. So I cut it in more than half, but I wasn't paying principal. So there is that. But I knew that, and I knew that if I paid principal, it would, pay down that loan, especially because it was an even better interest rate. PRT. P for principal, R for rate, T for time. It is one of the simplest formulas, and it is one of the earliest formulas they teach you in school. And if you, as he said, are going to school and getting these degrees, upwards of from an associate's, bachelor's, master's, doctorate, and you're too stupid to comprehend principal, rate, time, you're too stupid to exist. And you are in compos mentis. That's Latin for you're too fucking stupid to live.
Calculation should cover both, I think, the interest and slight amount going to your principal. But people also a lot of people go on an income-based repayment plan, and depending on, I don't even know what the interest rates are in the current market today on those loans, but you might not even be covering the interest fully. So you're just paying interest, and potentially your debt still goes up. Not sure what income, repayment plan you're qualifying for, what the size of your original loan is, on top of how many years you've been paying, and that calculation could be so low, dude, you don't even break interest because, quote, you can't afford it. Well, what did you major in, Cindy? That's the issue here that they don't mention, even though they've paid for over 10 years. But it's very simple, because if your loan is so massive and the interest on it is 10 or even 17%, then a simple $80,000 debt is going to generate well over $8,000 worth of interest, which comes down to a minimum monthly payment of well over $666. Yep, the devil himself, and that is just to cover the interest.
And I started with $80,000. Last year, I paid $6,000 lump sum because that's really the only way to get it low.
That does not do a single thing to your actual loan. Now, as some of you might know, I used to be a big believer of going to university, since I myself studied aerospace engineering and business administration at several universities across Europe. However, nowadays, and especially in the States, it makes almost no sense to go to university, since the cost-to-benefit ratio is completely messed up.
In today's modern world, you can take these Ivy League classes through what's called Coursera. Coursera, Charlie, Oscar, Uniform, Romeo, Sierra, Echo, Romeo, Alpha, dot, O as in Oscar, R as in Romeo, G as in Golf, Coursera.org. Sign up for their classes, and essentially it's the same as if you were attending the class as an audit, just sitting in. If you want credit or whatever, they have some kind of payment thing, but it's still a fraction of what a college tuition cost is. So there's Coursera.org, which is the actual accredited courses. In addition to that, MIT, Stanford, among others, if I'm not mistaken, have a lot of classes uploaded to YouTube. There's people that offer private pilot ground school videos. So you go to risingup.com and you can do the practice exams. You watch the videos so you can prep for your oral exam and see in real time observable actions so you can apply that to your flight time and not have to pay the flight instructor extra time to teach it to you 5 different times. The point why I want to illustrate that is because when you're getting your VFR rating, IFR rating, your commercial rating, your flight instructor rating, it adds up, and it's cost savings by using those resources. They may not have flight training on Coursera, but I'm pretty certain they have. At one point I saw law school classes, psychology classes, history classes, sociology classes, engineering classes, computer science classes, and you can find those on YouTube. Not so much on Rumble, yet in time that's going to change. Save some money, do your online education, do your education via online in that regard, or just go to your freaking local library and check out their Hemsler's, Latin for beginners, or Swedish for amateurs. Go on Amazon and buy the Dangerous Book for Boys and learn how to do, what's the thing they use the tripod and you do the elevation check. Civil engineers do that all the time. I can't think of it off the top of my head, and I'll kick myself when it comes to me later. But the Dangerous Book for Boys has all of this instruction on how to do anything from paper airplanes to basic civil engineering. George Washington surveying, that's the word. Yeah. Where you use the tripod and the line of sight, and you have the other guy with the height, the elevation stick. Yeah, and that's a $20 book. So if you want to be educated, there's many avenues out there. You don't need a $100,000, $200,000 gender studies degree to be educated. It's frickin' BS.
Especially for the Ivy League ones that are completely out of this world.
My goal was also to go to art school for fine arts, so I ended up getting into Parsons and SVA in Manhattan, which are 2 incredible art schools. After 1 year of art school on Zoom and 1 year in classrooms, I am over $80,000.
Oh, Lord, that is crazy. And this brings us to the first major problem here in this student loan disaster, which is way too many people pursuing pointless degrees for way too much money.
My name is Lex, and my concentration is the performance of self. Hi, I'm Gabrielle. My concentration is creative direction, production, and dare to say the arts.
And so clearly, America does not have a student loan problem. It has a financial literacy and high school education problem, which is really prevalent in this little genius right here, who sees herself as a new age rebel.
What we're doing from this point forward is a debt strike 2025. When the interest rates go up on that, I'm not paying those either, even when they start to meet our demands. And the demands are as such. Abolish ICE. I want critical race theory in the classroom.
Right. So she's fighting the system and is super anti-capitalism, right?
They have been making us suffer under capitalism forever.
Order to craft a way forward outside of capitalism. So the systems of...
I wish you could come here to the Balkans and Romania and see what communism has wrought upon the people. The remnants of a failed economic system. Come over here, because the people here are still recovering from that nightmare. Believe me. Come, look. You'll see a mix of capitalism and a mix of communism. Very strange to see.
Didn't Romania publicly execute their communist dictator at the fall of communism in the 90s? And that's where Bo is at right now, is in Romania. And I think it was I could be mistaken, Ceausescu. I think he was, treated in a similar fashion as Mussolini and his family at the conclusion of World War II, but at the conclusion of, the communist fall, if I'm not mistaken, Ceausescu was treated in a similar manner, whereas they used piano wire with Mussolini and his family. I don't think it was piano wire, but it was just as graphic.
Two worlds superimposed like that in the modern day. These people, bro, are especially the most ardent supporters of the party, always the young women, the most bigoted. Unbelievable. You're not going to pay your student loan debt? Cool. Have horrible credit the rest of your life. Never be able to take out a loan. Never be able to afford a house. No bank will loan you money. Oh, and good luck. You're going to have to probably put down a deposit on that next iPhone when you go into the fucking AT&T to go get the latest gadget. Yeah, you can't even get an iPhone without putting a down payment. Your credit's going to be so shit. This is wild, man. Or you could skip the line and just $5.99 and start showing your cooter. Okay? We don't have to have all this anti-capitalism, this economic theory talk, this whole, woke virtue signaling about whatever the fuck she woke signaled earlier. I don't even remember. Just get on OnlyFans, fulfill your purpose, be a meat wagon for a bunch of men to tug their chickens to, count your checks, and fucking bounce. Quiet out. We ain't trying to hear it anymore.
Capitalism shame you into severing yourself from your body.
Then why does she buy an iPhone and a MacBook?
There it is.
Of the most capitalistic company in the world. Apple basically won capitalism, and she is happily supporting them. Not to mention that she's perfectly fine flying off to Paris and flying to London while enjoying the good life in San Diego.
And tag the sponsor, G. She's not tagging the sponsor.
And LA, I mean, just a classic foolish champagne socialist, sipping vino and complaining nonstop about the country that allows her to basically live a dream life that most people in the world would kill for.
And now I have to suffer through a civil war after having to suffer through Donald Trump basically my entire life so far?
Oh, just shut up, you absolute hypocrite. These banks and institutions are willing to lend to these people so much money without any real career prospects that they will ever be able to pay this back. And as a special little mindfuck, these banks and lenders give them a ridiculously low minimum monthly payment that they should have never even accepted, which will keep them in debt forever.
So I go ahead at that 6-month mark and I applied for the income-based repayment. I qualified, and the repayment was at $0. Now it still did accrue interest, but my payment per month was 0. And every year I have recertified,
You see, that's what I'm talking about.
and it's just always been 0.
So my payment will be going from a percentage, a somewhat mandatory percentage of my income every month.
Yeah, so these two are unbelievably stupid, but for different reasons. First up, the 0 monthly payments lady. Now, she has unsubsidized loans, meaning that the interest on those loans are not covered by the government. So for over 15 years, plus the years that she was studying, those loans incurred interest, meaning she's absolutely f***ed right now.
I'm just barely making it. I'm single. I'm a single mom. How are we doing that? How? I have a college degree. I can't make more than $20 an hour. Yeah, I picked the wrong degree.
Hey, you know what I wonder, and this is sad, if this gets bad enough, and I think it will, you think the United States will just bail out the women for doing this? You think we'll cuck out to a huge block of society, of young college age, not even young, just college?
I suspect they are already making plans to do that. And if that happens, I think that we should storm. Look, they turned January 6th into a clown show that it's, taking a protest and turning it into, light about it being, a surrection that begins with an IN. But what people forget about historically is what was called the bonus army, and this was done in the early 1930s, roughly 15 years after the conclusion of World War I. World War I ended, prior to 1920. Then there was the Roaring Twenties, and then there was the stock market crash at the conclusion of the 1920s, which led into the Great Depression, which was made worse by the socialist, communist directions that the federal government took, to quote-unquote solve the problem. Military veterans descended upon Washington, D.C. protest, and they were ignored for a period of time until George Patton was ordered to take care of them. And if anybody is aware of how Patton takes care of a situation, it's worth looking into.
Educated women, a massive chunk, bro, of the economic engine. You think the United States will just forgive student loans? I could see if they become a political force and you actually have to pander to them, probably, or else you lose the election. But according to the last election we just had, it's young men you need to be pandering to and fixing their problems. So what are we going to do with this ticking debt bomb from all these college-aged women who have made terrible decisions and have no idea of their consequences? I think we're going to do what we've always done. Taxpayers will bail out this chunk of people, probably in 20 years from now, something like that. 10 years from now, you'll start to hear rumblings, maybe 5 years from now. Maybe even this next election cycle, they'll start floating it in the air, like bringing back, Biden's student loan borrower relief. Watch. I guarantee you that's going to become if that doesn't become a talking point for Democrats, they're dumb as shit. That's one of the few things they have up their sleeve to basically coax them into a vote. You don't even have to coax these people. Technically, you're not earning any people from across the aisle. Let's just say these people that are already in debt are already voting for Democrats anyways. So you're going to have to, you need another olive branch extended to the other side, the young men that you've been demonizing. But you never know. You never know. I just know women usually get bailed out. And Big Daddy government loves a good taxpayer-fueled bailout. Just ask the banks.
Put myself in debt.
This is why these old income-based repayment plans were absolutely ridiculous and needed to be overhauled, which is exactly what is happening right now. Now, obviously, everyone that sees their payments go up blames Trump, but the real problem is that they should have never even been given a zero monthly payment for over 15 years. Nor should they have accepted these low minimum monthly payments. Which brings me to the 250 lady.
This is the impact just on me of what he has done. My payment is going to more than quadruple.
Yeah, well, actually, 4 times 250 is $1,000. So they haven't more than quadrupled, they've more than tripled. Now, on the surface, that looks like an innocent mistake. But when you listen to more and more of her rants, it becomes very clear that she likes to make things seem more dramatic. Since she claims that raising her monthly payments from $250, which is ridiculously low, by the way, to $900 is simply unacceptable and irresponsible for her salary.
Percentage, a somewhat manageable percentage of my income every month to the amount that will pay off my loans in the next 10 years.
But this same woman has plenty of money to go to a Taylor Swift Eras tour.
I finally got Eras tour tickets. I'm so freaking excited.
Which definitely wasn't cheap. Or fly off to Amsterdam for a quick little 4-day Euro trip of living the European dream. And fly off to Italy for a nice, relaxing holiday. Because why not, right? It's not like we have students relaxing while gobbling up some old gooch. Let's just call it what it is. These women do not have the money for this kind of travel. A man is behind it. And loans to repay. Now, does this look like someone who can't possibly... Whose boat is that? Talk to me, bro. Swallowing multiple gooches, multiple meat sticks, in and out of all the orifices. Miss me with that bullshit. You know. Pay more than $250 a month? Of course not. Oh, and don't forget, she also had plenty of money to spend throwing a very nice wedding that by her own accord costed her way too much money.
I also spent a lot of money on my honeymoon, and I don't regret that.
She's married, so again, I told you, Amanda, she locked herself down to one gooch. And that dude, if he's affording all this, imagine the fucking intelligence this guy has to get down on one knee and say, will you marry me to this debt cuck? Boy, oh boy, do men love building the world and then just handing it off to the worst women imaginable. Unreal.
But I do have some feelings about the money I spent on the wedding.
So clearly she's able to spend tens of thousands of dollars having fun.
There he is, bro. There's the guy. There's our guy. Mr. Gooch Supreme here. There he is. I hope it's worth it, bro. I hope the honey pot is extra slimy, full of honey, glistening. Because, geez Louise, you took on the responsibility of an adult child. You got to carry an adult child on your back the rest of your life. You think she's going to be paying that shit? No, bro, you're footing the bill. You're a man. That's what men are supposed to do. Otherwise, what's the point in having you? And by the way, Stacy just went to blah, 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 blah. She was in Oslo last week, and like, I want to go to Scandinavia too. I want to see what it looks like in Norway. And by the way, she was just in Egypt, and I want to go see the pyramids. Good job, bro. Good job. You selected greatness.
All over the world, but asking her to pay back her student loans by more than $250 a month is just simply asking too much. This is why people without student loans or people who've never even been to college absolutely.
This shit's crazy. This dude went viral. He like changed his life. I remember we watched the video. I think I saw he got fired and then rehired or something crazy like that. I was just 18 years old. These are the same women who say that teenage girls are more mature than boys the same age. LOL. Heater comment. I'm going to file for bankruptcy. Good luck with that. Student loan debt.
That's actually a good point to address. Before I bought a duplex, I took several property management, landlord-tenant law type of classes, both for locating, properties and how to manage them and what the laws were, what you could and could not do, so that you wouldn't be, sued for discrimination or something. I don't want to get sidetracked, but the instructor cited, and I don't recall what the legal court case he cited, because this was back in 2010, 2012, maybe even 2006. But he said there were legal court cases that stated if you had to serve a renter, for example, the eviction papers or pay or quit, and you're developing legal proceedings. I mean, you wouldn't need to serve a resident a pay or quit because it's a 3-day, 10-day, 30-day. But what it came down to is he cited a case of a 12-year-old was given the information, and the parents argued, with their legal representation, that it was inappropriate. But the court concluded that a 12-year-old girl was competent of receiving documents to pass to the parents, whereas a 12-year-old boy was not competent to receive legal documents and be responsible to pass them to the parents and so forth. If somebody's got, legal research experience and is curious, and you happen to know or of this case, let us know in the comments. I know that Mozilla Firefox has recapped the law, the PACER court cases, backwards, PACER, P-A-C-E-R, backwards is recap, and the people that made courtlistener.com originally had created recap the law, and it was a way to pay one time for court cases, and then anybody that looked it up would not have to pay for it. Not only would the initial person be paid, wouldn't have to pay, but nobody else would ever have to pay for that court citation again if they use the Mozilla Firefox recap the law tool. But if somebody is a legal researcher and happens to know of the case or is able to locate it, let everybody know what that case is listed under.
To fall under bankruptcy. I can't believe they don't know that. I tell men, and L. Heater comment. I'm going to file for bankruptcy. Good luck with that. Student loan debt doesn't fall under bankruptcy. I can't believe they don't know that. I tell men, and I agree with this too, never marry a woman who owes student loans or credit card debt. When I married my foreign national wife, she actually had savings in the bank and zero debt. I can confirm this is real. My woman has savings and zero debt. I was tired of dating American women who had massive debt. Yeah, she had substantial savings. So, brought something to the table, as they like to say. Accountability to a woman is like kryptonite to Superman, woke or not. This one says, men, do not help rescue them. Let them be strong and independent, exactly just like they've been saying. Let them show us how independent and strong they are. Because what do you need a man for? Other than an open pocketbook? No thanks. Anyways, boys, protect your wallets. See you in the next one.
More tentative when working with and many male managers and owners are feeling a little bit more tentative when working with and managing their female workers.
It's not irrational for some men to feel hesitant in today's workplace climate, especially when a single misunderstanding can damage a career. The fear many male managers feel isn't always about guilt, it's about uncertainty in shifting social norms. Wanting clear boundaries and fairness doesn't make men weak, it makes them cautious in a world where the rules keep changing.
Listen to this. A side result, an unintended consequence of the Me Too movement has popped up. Male executives and managers, some are now saying they are afraid to work with and mentor female colleagues in the workplace. So, we're trying to find out, is it too hard to see the difference?
Men aren't confused, they're cautious, because that line between mentoring and harassment gets weaponized fast. One offhand comment twisted the wrong way and your career's toast. It's not fear of doing wrong, it's fear of being framed for it. When anything can be spun as harassment, smart men pull back. It's not weakness, it's survival in a rigged game.
If I was a man, and I'm not a man, but if I was a man, I wouldn't hire a woman. I wouldn't do it, and I say it all the time, and I say that, and that is something that women need to consider when they're talking about this stuff. When you're saying that a man complimenting you and saying, I really like your outfit today, is a form of sexism. What is it? If you're a man, why hire a woman? Right? So you fought all this time to be able to get into the workforce, only to say these are going to be the rules. You know, if you say anything, even if you compliment me, if you look at anything, I'm going to have a reason to fight you. And by the way, you're going to want to settle and pay me because even just the stain of an accusation is enough to ruin men. So if you're a guy, right, in this society, in this Me Too environment, in this litigation-rich environment of misogyny and sexism and all of these claims, what is the value add? What's the risk? You know, the benefit and the risk. I can't do the analysis and say, I'd just be like, no, sorry, that.
This mindset is a toxic surrender to victimhood culture, punishing men for simply existing around women. Men shouldn't be guilt-tripped or scared away from hiring women because of exaggerated fears and false accusations. Real equality means trust and fairness, not caving to paranoia. If men quit hiring women out of fear, everyone loses, especially women themselves. Grow up and stop weaponizing victimhood.
A paper came out recently that looked at the impact of the Me Too movement on academia, and it actually shows that post-Me Too, women's productivity fell largely due to fewer collaborations with male researchers. The paper shows that this drop is most pronounced at universities where the perceived risk of sexual harassment accusations is highest. So the actual findings comparing research before and after the movement are right here, and as you can see, after the Me Too movement, collaborations with male researchers inside the same institution fell to close to zero. The author points out that men feel like if they accidentally say the wrong thing, they could be canceled or fired. And this isn't just in academia. The paper also cites a 2018 study which showed that 60% of male managers are uncomfortable participating in common activities with women due to the same concerns. And a curious finding of the study was that men make up for the loss in this collaboration by just collaborating more with other men, whereas women don't make up for it at all.
This so-called progress is backfiring hard on women themselves. Men, fearing false accusations, just avoid collaboration with women and instead stick to their own circles, shutting women out of crucial opportunities. Meanwhile, women don't adapt, losing valuable connections and jobs. This Me Too overreach isn't empowerment, it's isolation. If women want real equality, they need to stop creating a hostile, suspicious work environment that kills their chances.
The Me Too movement in 2017 raised awareness to numerous stories of sexual abuse of women in the workplace. Not only was the movement successful in exposing individuals like Harvey Weinstein, it even had an impact on public policy. But like anything, the pendulum swings both ways. Despite its success, the Me Too movement promoted extreme slogans such as "Believe all women," and along with it created a climate of fear where innocent men were unfairly accused and reputations destroyed. And the most notable was the Johnny Depp-Amber Heard case where Heard wrote an op-ed alleging that she was a victim of abuse. And it wasn't until 4 years after getting canceled canceled from everything when Depp won the defamation trial for the false allegations.
The believe all women mantra weaponized justice, turning it into a witch hunt that ruins innocent men without evidence. The Depp Heard saga exposes the dangerous reality. False accusations can destroy careers and lives with no accountability until years later. This blind belief mentality is reckless and toxic, trampling fairness and due process in favor of performative victimhood. It must stop.
There's just a scandal that came out. This woman falsely accused several young men of doing something to her. These young men tried to delete themselves because it was absolutely lied. Now, evidence came out recently where she went to the store, bought a hammer, beat herself.
Oh my goodness. Oh my God.
These young men, if it wasn't for other men coming around and supporting these young men, and just because she was a woman, she was believed, and I'm not saying that doesn't happen. I actually come from a family that's happened, but I still know several stories of women who have falsely accused, ruined these young men's lives. And guess what? You know what society says after that? That young woman, this is one woman who was finally held accountable because of her lies and destroying their life. But do you know what happened? Those young men, most of them who have been falsely accused, they lose their scholarship, they lose their jobs, they lose everything, and then there's nothing that's said. If it goes away and it wasn't true, you never hear accountability. You never hear any woman go to jail for falsely accusing those men.
There needs to be a law for absolutely brutal injustice. False accusations destroy innocent men's lives, scholarships, jobs, reputations wiped out, while the real culprit often walks free without consequence. Society's blind trust in women's claims without proof enables this abuse of power. We desperately need laws holding false accusers accountable, or else men will keep suffering irreparable damage with zero justice or protection. Enough is enough.
And when folks say things like, believe all women, I question why. Really, why? Because I'm inclined to believe stories of sexual abuse. I really am. But when folks say believe all women, you can't believe all women any more than you can believe all men or believe any other group of people. And to suggest that women are inherently more believable than men is sexist. To say that men don't deserve the same due process as women is sexist. And I believe that men shouldn't act like pigs. I've been only advocating this since I was a teenager. I'm the only man in America who was a virgin until I was married and proud of it. I've been advocating for a higher standard of traditional behavior on the part of men, literally my entire public career. But that doesn't mean that you get to carve out a section of crimes that don't require evidence.
This is spot on. Blindly believing all women not only dismisses men's rights, but flips sexism on its head, assuming men are guilty by default. Justice demands evidence, not bias. Advocating high standards for men is admirable, but it doesn't mean abandoning fairness. Equality means equal due process, not special treatment or presumptions based on gender. Facts over feelings, always.
It looks like the world owes Trevor Bauer a big apology. Trevor was able to finally vindicate himself and prove what he had been saying all along, that he was innocent, and that this woman, his accuser, was nothing more than a liar. And Bauer's evidence was a bombshell.
Next victim, star pitcher for the Dodgers. A text Lindsay Hill sent to a friend before she ever even met me. Then, after the first time we met, net worth is 51 mil. Bitch, you better secure the bag, was the response. But how was she gonna do that? Need daddy to choke me out, she said, being an absolute whore to try to get in on his 51 million.
The interesting...
He recently won his civil suit against her. In my own opinion, she shouldn't be allowed to walk the earth. She needs to have her name thrown through the mud and plastered on billboards everywhere as this is what will happen to you when you lie about trying to destroy someone's life.
Part, no one for a second questioned her story. I have to ask, what does that say about our society and its attitudes towards men? That they are all deemed to be scumbags if a woman says so? The Me Too movement, which originally gave way to give a voice to actual victims, has now transformed into a manipulative tactic for women to make excuses for their own degenerate and immoral behavior. And the Me Too movement, it's clear it means nothing anymore, except to strip innocent men of their power.
The Me Too movement and its bastard child, Believe All Women, was a feminist agenda to break the so-called glass ceiling. What it did is it removed men that they felt were obstacles to their advancement. It wasn't that they were competent. It was that they believed themselves to be competent. And just look at the last 10 years since this has all began and been implemented. Everything's gone to crap. As Trump said, everything that goes woke goes to shit. Oh, but I have Disney Plus. Yeah, and that moron, whoever's running it, that woke idiot guy, has put a bunch of women in charge of various areas. Famously or infamously, the Lucas lady, Kennedy. She's been connected with decent projects in the past. I can't remember what they were off the top of my head, but she's been a producer for various movies in the past that did well and were well received and were decent to watch. But her actual leadership has been an abysmal failure. But more to the point of what the Me Too agenda was, it was a means of breaking the so-called glass ceiling by removing forcibly men that they felt were in their way to being advanced. And once those men were gone and women did advance into position, everything's gone to garbage. That's why everything's failing. Not just the entertainment industry, not just the music industry, not just the computer game industry, every industry. Every single industry that has gone woke has, get woke, get broke. Get woke, go broke. And that's what's happened. It's going to take us well over a decade to fix it. And the faster people start recognizing that womanist ideology is more destructive than communism, and it needs to be beaten into oblivion, mocked, ridiculed, humiliated, shamed, verbally harassed and abused until it's gone, that no one would ever think of being a womanist participant ever again. Until that changes, society is going to keep disintegrating as it's been doing. And somebody recently put a 4chan post about they're just going to essentially keep putting patches on the inner tube as it keeps slowly leaking, limping it along. You ride your bike for a block, put another patch on, keep the air in there, ride a little further. You're going to go less each and every time you put a patch on, but eventually that whole inner tube is nothing but patches, leaky patches at that. But it'll be such a slow disintegration that someday our descendants are going to wake up and look around at a decayed and disintegrated infrastructure that nothing is new, nothing is innovated, and whatever exists is broken and is MacGyvered, to work. Tell me something that's been innovated in the, that's really done something. It doesn't exist. The only innovations that are going on are biological means of limiting population growth, of infecting it into our food supply. It's absurd.
This case screams how toxic the current culture is. Men are instantly branded scum based on unproven female accusations, no questions asked. Trevor Bauer's vindication exposes the dark side of #MeToo, a movement hijacked by some to exploit the system for selfish, manipulative gains. It's a disgrace that innocent men suffer while women with ulterior motives get a free pass. Society needs a serious wake-up call.
I am so sick of this idea that
We should always accept that in every situation a woman is a victim. I'm not empowered by that. I don't find that to be empowering, right? The Me Too movement to me disempowered women because it said women never know what they're doing, they just are always little flowers, and men take advantage. The truth is that women take advantage too. And the easiest thing for women to sell to get what they want is sex, right? This is what Taz the sponsor proves. I want to be rich, I want to have money, and I don't want to work, so I'm going to sell sex. I have no talent and I want to be an actress, so I'm going to sell sex. Sex is a power that women have. Being beautiful is a power. Being aesthetic, being feminine is a power that women have, and women tend to wield that power heavily throughout society.
This truth cuts deep. The always a victim narrative infantilizes women and strips real empowerment away. Women aren't helpless flowers. They wield sex and beauty as tools of power, often manipulating situations to their advantage. Ignoring this reality only fuels hypocrisy. True empowerment means owning all aspects of influence, not hiding behind victimhood or pretending women are innocent angels in a ruthless game. Thanks for watching Manhood. If you want access to exclusive episodes and want to support the channel, hit that join button and become a member. Don't forget to like, subscribe and share this video if it hit home. Drop your stories and thoughts in the comments. We read everyone. See you tomorrow.
Do we not live in interesting times?
We do live in interesting times.
So we're here in Rome.
Interesting times and Rome. That combo might sound poetic, but it's also prophetic. Once upon a time, the Roman Empire ruled the known world. Power, wealth, dominance. Then it crumbled. I bet the leaders back then also thought they were just living in interesting times.
It's the crisis of the 3rd century. You've got revolts, you've got civil war, hyperinflation, and a string of useless emperors.
Fast forward to today. Our society is facing a quieter collapse. Not on the battlefield, but in bedrooms, phones, and empty cribs. In an eye-opening interview, Vice President J.D. Vance shares what he's really worried about. And it's not inflation, not China, not even AI taking jobs. It's something deeper. Now it's time for us to get into this and do what we gotta do. Because we're winning. We're winning.
So anyway, I'm more optimistic, I should say, about the economic side of this, recognizing that yes, there are concerns. I don't mean to understate them. Where I really worry about this is in pretty much everything non-economic. I think the way that people engage with one another, I mean, the trend that I am most worried about, there are a lot of them, and I actually, well, I don't want to give too many details, but I talked to the Holy Father about this today. You know, if you look at basic dating behavior among young people, and I think a lot of this is the dating apps are probably more destructive than we fully appreciate. I think part of it is technology has just, for some reason, made it harder for young men and young women to sort of communicate with each other in the same way. Our young men and women just aren't dating. And if they're not dating, they're not getting married, they're not starting families. There's a level of isolation, I think, mediated through technology, that technology can kind of, you know, be a bit of a salve, it can be a bit of a band-aid, maybe make you feel less lonely even when you are lonely. But this is where I think AI could be profoundly dark and negative. I don't think it'll mean 3 million truck drivers are out of a job. I certainly hope it doesn't mean that. But what I do really worry is, does it mean that there are millions of American teenagers who are talking to chatbots who don't have their best interests at heart? Or even if they do have their best interests at heart, they start to develop a relationship. They start to expect that a chatbot that's trying to sort of give you a dopamine rush, you know, that compared to a chatbot, a normal human interaction is not going to be as satisfying because human beings have wants and needs, right? And I think that's one of the, of course, like the great things about marriage in particular is you have this other person and you just have to kind of figure it out together, right? But if the other person is a chatbot who's just trying to hook you to spend as much time on it, that's the sort of stuff that I really worry about with AI.
Exactly, Mr. Vice President. We can't seem to figure it out together, even with all this technology, access, and supposed progress. Why? Because marriage has no inherent value, only what society pours into it. And right now, we're pouring nothing. J.D. Vance wasn't just in Rome to talk politics. He met with the Pope. Once upon a time, marriage wasn't about romance or aesthetics. about religion, duty, survival. It was sacred. Marriage meant you build, you sacrifice, you stay. Now, you post, you vibe, you leave. According to Pew Research Center, 62% of U.S. adults still identify as Christian. Sounds solid, right? But in reality, it's cultural Christianity, not committed.
In the last 50 years, marriage rates in the United States have dropped by nearly 60%.
Church attendance is down. Traditional values are hollowed out. Till death do us part has turned into until things get difficult. And the younger the generation, the weaker the tie.
Is marriage dead?
I recently bought a house. I'm 24, I'm single, and so I don't think that marriage is essential for me. Trying to find someone to make that commitment to is overwhelming, and I'm not sure if I want to get married.
I mean, it's just to pause there. One of the most, I would say, hardcore critical of illegal immigration think tanks, when I looked into this, had its estimate, I think, in the 10 to 12 million range, right? So
they did, and I think they're undercounting it, because I think they're counting the people that we were aware of. I don't think they were counting that estimate. Unknown gotaways. They weren't counting certain classes of asylum seekers, of TPS seekers. So they were answering the question as honestly as they could. But I think if you look at the grand scheme of it, it's higher. But look, whether it's 12 million or whether it's 20 million, it's a lot.
It's a lot, and it's only growing. Because America's immigration crisis isn't just about the border. It's about the birth rate. The U.S. fertility rate is now 1.66, far below the 2.1 needed to sustain the population. Not enough babies, not enough workers, not enough soldiers, eventually, not enough America. So whether you support immigration or not, it's not optional anymore. It's a demographic patch job. But what happens when you rely too heavily on outsiders to keep your empire alive? History already answered that. And you don't need to look far to see it happening. Take truck drivers.
You ever get stuck in your truck, parked for hours, waiting on a load that never comes? Meanwhile, all the mega carriers are telling the world that there is a driver shortage? If you've been out here long enough, you know that's not the truth. It's not that we don't have drivers. It's that we don't have drivers who are willing to work 24/7 in a truck without a break for pennies on the dollar.
For years, we've heard there's a shortage, that America doesn't have enough drivers to keep the supply chain moving. But the truth, we don't have a shortage of people with commercial licenses. We have a shortage of people willing to do the job, because the job is broken. Low pay, brutal hours, constant turnover. It's not a worker shortage. It's a retention crisis.
There are now 7 million able-bodied males between 25 and 40 years old that are able to work and are not even looking for work.
So what happens next? Immigration becomes the answer, again.
That technology can kind of, be a bit of a salve. It can be a bit of a Band-Aid, maybe make you feel less lonely even when you are lonely. But this is where I think AI could be profoundly dark and negative. I don't think it'll mean 3 million truck drivers are out of a job. I certainly hope it doesn't mean that.
If American citizens won't fill the roles that keep the economy running, where do you think the manpower is going to come from? It's already coming from elsewhere. And now, new rules from the Department of Transportation may push even more foreign-born drivers off the road for not meeting English language standards. With 72% of all U.S. freight moved by trucks, the stakes aren't just economic, they're existential. No men, no manpower. No manpower, no productivity. And the system breaks.
From this point, the western half slowly began to fracture, first losing Britannia in 410, and then being reduced piece by piece to just the Italian peninsula and a few neighboring regions.
Rome didn't fall overnight. It fell because it outsourced its strength. Foreign labor, foreign soldiers, foreign values. The Roman identity blurred, then disappeared. Sound familiar?
The real issue here is not trade with Australia. It's not even trade with the EU. It is trade with China. And for national security reasons, the United States must end its dependence on Chinese manufacturing. We can't run our military as things stand right now without goods from China. We can't, China's producing our pharmaceuticals for us. They could cut them off, at any time.
And this isn't just an American problem. Look at South Korea. Lowest birth rate in the world. So low, the government now runs matchmaking events to convince people to date and marry. But it's not working.
these young South Koreans are on a mass blind date. 100 men and women are here hoping to find love. With the help of the government.
마음의 여유가 없어요, 보니까. 그래서 그렇지. South Korea will collapse. Yep, you heard that right. At its current rate, Korea is expected to go from a population of nearly 52 million to 34 million, a loss of over 30% in less than 50 years. Over that period, Korea will lose 50% of its workforce and have a median age of 60.
In 2018, radical feminist movement 4B emerged in response to societal misogyny. Some of its supporters don't wish to show their faces. What does 4B, the four no's, stand for?
No sex, no dating, no marriage, no childbirth.
It is written like sixth strike, but it's not 100% about it. So 4B thing is very Korean, feministic lifestyle, and it is like irreversible. We cannot be taken back again.
Radical feminism, career-first culture, and a collapse in trust between men and women have destroyed the desire to build families. And when a nation stops building families, it starts building decline. J.D. Vance sees it. He's not just talking about immigration. He's talking about replacement, not just of people, but of values, of identity, of culture.
So let me say very simply, I want more babies in the United States of America.
And here's the part. No one in power will say out loud, we've already crossed the point of no return. The elites, the corporations, the political class, they aren't investing in families. They aren't promoting healthy relationships. They aren't encouraging men and women to build the next generation. Why? Because they don't need strong families. They need consumers. They don't want citizens. They want workers and voters who are easy to replace and easier to control. They push an feminist agenda that tears the family apart. They tell women that men are disposable. They tell women that wanting a husband and kids is oppressive or outdated. They tell men that fatherhood is weakness and masculinity is toxic. And when society collapses from within, they import the solution. More people from anywhere at any cost. This isn't about love. It's not about justice. It's not even about unity. It's about control. And it always has been. So when J.D. Vance says young people aren't dating or getting married, he's not just making an observation. He's sounding the alarm. But let's be honest, the government isn't going to fix this. Not because they can't, but because they won't. This collapse isn't just cultural, it's political. It's fueled by policies that punish families, reward dysfunction, and divide men and women. There's no bill coming to bring back commitment. No stimulus check that can rebuild trust. Because the people in power, they benefit from the breakdown, and they're not planning to stop it. The empire is rotting from the inside. And just like Rome, no one at the top is planning to save it. Be working. Protect yourself at all times. This video has officially been highlighted.
Pretty interesting new documentary-ish released on YouTube, which I can't actually believe that it's still up. Details a pretty big, at least according to them, cover-up back from that fateful day. Back when many of us realized that maybe things weren't the way they seemed. Maybe our own government might be willing to do the unthinkable, possibly, to justify going to war, to justify the largest scale surveillance on its own citizens via the Patriot Act that we'd ever seen. Many of us still wondering about that third tower. Now, obviously, you know, in interest of honesty and full disclosure, many of these things have been investigated by the FBI. Many people choose not to believe it. Even our hero, Dan Bongino, and Kash Patel now heading the FBI, seemingly completely sweeping all of the world's, at least America's, biggest questions around some of the biggest controversies that have happened in this country over the past several years. Well, TMZ, of all people, has released a documentary which consists of some older footage, but repackages it in a way that is actually wild to discuss. They're talking about a fifth plane on that fateful day. And there's a lot going on with this. We're going to go into it. I'm going to discuss it. Obviously, this is all conjecture. You draw your own conclusions, right? TMZ alleges that there was, in fact, a fifth plane on that day that was covered up by the FBI. In a new documentary, TMZ interviewed 3 different flight attendants and a pilot who were all on United Flight 23. After being evacuated from the plane, the pilot says they later found out that the hatch on the bottom of the plane had been open. Now, I don't know, everything we know now about, what goes on at airports, do we know, okay, the hatch was open and that's why they were evacuated? The hatches weren't opened on the other plane, so I don't know how quite that relates. We're going to take a look at a clip. The airplane was locked and sealed when I left the airplane, so something else was going on that I couldn't explain. The flight crew said that there were 4 Arabs on the plane who demanded that the flight take off when the attendants tried giving them food. One of the men had requested to see the cockpit before takeoff. The crew says they were interviewed by the FBI but never heard back, and never found out if the men were questioned or not. Now, according to community notes, just in full disclosure, there is a documentary that TMZ is pulling from that is actually 2 years old. And that documentary is called, if you want to watch it, they're actually just linking to TMZ Investigates the Fifth Plane. Okay. So, I'm not really sure. They're relisting it. They put it on YouTube to bring it back into the world. They've actually made this a while ago. Interesting now, they've just uploaded it. You see here, they uploaded it June 3rd. So this is the first time they've ever uploaded it to YouTube. So I don't know what the situation is with that, why it was perhaps being suppressed, why they never uploaded it before. The FBI has acknowledged an investigation into the attempt on the fifth plane in Florida, in a Florida newspaper back in 2023. This, they say, was not covered up. Well, I don't know. You see, the FBI acknowledges it's actively investigating an apparent attempt to hijack a fifth plane on 9/11. Now, they acknowledge they investigated it. This was from July 21st, 2023. So, but this is 20 years after the fact. So, maybe it was covered up in the 20 years before that. Nearly 22 years after that fateful day. The FBI has disclosed that it is actively investigating an apparent attempt on a fifth plane. So this community note saying that it wasn't covered up actually does not disprove that. You always have to be very suspect of community notes. They are politically, ideologically compromised. The commission for that interview also, back on April 14th, 2004, also allegedly looked into it. Now, who were these 4 people? Were they investigated? Obviously, since Kash Patel is one of the most transparent administration in history, let's see. Hopefully he can answer these questions pretty simply. Were they investigated? Who were they? What was going on with that flight? They put this out. Where is this? Here, I will go to here. Let's go back to the Florida investigation. Okay. Bulldog or whatever it's called, right? Where are you? FBI acknowledges, yes. The plane was a wide-bodied 767, was operated in United Airlines at 9 o'clock that morning. Flight 23 was scheduled to make a non-stop transcontinental trip from New York's JFK to LA. Aboard were 160 passengers, 8 or 9 crew. Flight 23 is not mentioned in the final report of the commission, even though the commission records show that its staff was well aware of it. Florida Bulldog reported the little-known story of Flight 23 last September, which included information provided by pilot Tom Manilow and other crew members that were interviewed by the FBI the very next day. The Bulldog filed a Freedom of Information request for the FBI about UAL Flight 23 last summer. The FBI recently responded by acknowledging that it has records about Flight 23, but that they are exempt from public disclosure. I mean, it sounds like they are covering it up to me. Why would they be exempt? They could, records released could interfere with enforcement proceedings. There is a pending or prospective law enforcement proceeding relevant to these responsive records, and the release of the information could reasonably be expected to interfere with those proceedings. Therefore, a request being administratively closed. The letter does not elaborate, but given the passage of so many years, it seems plausible the FBI's probe is approaching a decision point as to whether or not there'll be criminal charges. It's well known that the 19, individuals, including 15 citizens of Saudi Arabia, engaged in everything going on that day. Now, the FBI was, in fact, notified about Flight 23. Here's a picture about an open hatch. Manilow, now retired, went to the chief pilot's office as described what happened with the Arabs. The chief pilot called the FBI. Agents questioned the crew at length the following day. An agent told Manilow that there were actually 7 Arabs or Muslims who may have been Saudis on the plane. Gee, where were all the other hijackers from? There were a couple with 2 or 3-year-old baby. We're looking for the other 4 gentlemen. Last March, TMZ investigates a broadcast program about Flight 23 that took the story further. 2 flight attendants said that the 4 Arabs in first class were 2 young men, a young boy, and a woman involved in a burqa. They believed was actually a man posing as a woman. The men were impatient to take off. One flight attendant noted that there's also a man in business class wearing a t-shirt, sweating profusely, even though the plane was fully cooled. The flight attendants also state that after everyone was believed to have been deplaned, it was discovered that the floor hatch behind the crew cabin and under carpeting had been opened. So maybe one of them did that to try and stay on the plane. Leading to an electronics department, another hatch opens to the underside of the plane. Manilow did not observe it, but speculated it may have been used by someone on the ground to enter the plane to retrieve weapons, like box cutters. I'm not sure that I'm so quick to dismiss this. Here's what some of the flight attendants said back then.
Taller, well-built gentleman in a tan suit, a young boy about 6 to 7 years old, a woman in a hijab, and a gentleman that appeared to be a type of bodyguard.
My name is Sandy Thorngren. I was a flight attendant on Flight 23 on September 11th, 2001. I was working in the business galley. I had gotten out, walked down the aisleway going up to first class, and I noticed there were 4 people in first class. What struck me at that time was there was a woman wearing a burqa. I figured it was a woman because that's who wears that. The opening of the headdress was very tight and could barely see his eyes. I did explain to our purser that I thought that wasn't a woman, it was actually a man.
I was absolutely convinced it was a man. Absolutely.
Interesting.
There was no doubt in my mind.
It was a man, and I could tell by the size of his hands. He had hair on his hands.
So they were posing as
it was definitely a male underneath that burqa.
There were many questions, including about the Pentagon, including about insurance policies that may or may not have taken out just days before. There are all sorts of questions about that day. There are questions about the people that had always eaten dinner, eaten breakfast on the towers, that just so happened to not show up that day, but had eaten on that spot for many, many days leading up to that. This is probably one of America's darkest secrets. At its face, with no conspiracy at all, it was our greatest lack in security ever exposed. At its darkest, it's the unthinkable. There are people out there that believe that this event that happened. There are people that believe it was allowed to happen. There are people that believe it was made to happen. I guess you'll have to be the judge. Might be worth watching this documentary, which just hit YouTube a couple years later. Pretty interesting stuff. Let me know what you think in the comment section down below. We'll talk to you again real soon. Well, boys, it's fair to say here that the love affair is definitely over between these two.
What do you want? What do you want?
It's not that simple.
What do you want?
No spending beyond reasonable means and a balanced budget. Please, oh please, of course, the two are fighting now more than ever as the Ruskies are getting involved here and actually offering Elon Musk political asylum. Will he need it? What's going on here? As the Russian offensive into Ukraine just took a major turn, as clearly right now the escalations are going to be continuing. They are going to be fast. They are going to be severe. I wanted to talk a little bit about Trump, Elon, and how the Russians are getting involved here with a bigger perspective, with the long-term trajectory of how this geopolitical conundrum mess is only going to get that much messier in this video. If you appreciate our many years of predicting all of this and calling it out, subscribe, click the notification. And this tear here will have implications, especially when it comes to satellite space tech, as Donald Trump wants to build a golden dome. Elon Musk has a lot of keys to some important tech that could be utilized for that project, and many other projects, including, of course, a project that a lot of people don't really know about. A lot of it is kind of secret when it comes to satellite, weaponized type of tech and information gathering that right now is being utilized in Ukraine to its fullest extent and making the biggest type of impact here. Now, there's two individuals that hold a lot of cards against each other. How will they use it? How will they utilize it? As of course, there was supposed to be a phone call between Donald Trump and Elon Musk that looks like was just canceled, as we have this reporting from sources within the White House.
You call the president on his cell phone at 6:45, he picks up.
Yeah, he picked up. Look, there's been reporting out there that the White House is working to put together a call between Elon Musk and Donald Trump to broker some kind of peace. I asked Donald Trump about that. He said he's not particularly interested in talking to Elon Musk. He said Elon wants to talk to him. He's not ready to talk to Musk, who he called a man who has lost his mind.
They have a lot of leverage over each other.
Oh, there's no question about that. Look, Elon Musk, obviously the richest man on the planet, the biggest Republican donor in the history of Republican donors.
Yep, and that donor is gone. Will the space tech be gone too? As we saw Elon Musk specifically just kind of hint and then say, I'm taking away my space tech. And then say, no, I'll keep it up. As of course, the Russians are now getting involved. Before talking about the Russians and their major offensive in this Ukrainian conflict that we just saw here, we wanted to tell you about the sponsor of today's contract. I mean, Elon Musk, goal 8-4. Let's get to it. As of course, we have this from the Moscow Times, describing how Russia could give Elon Musk political asylum. And with the way that this kind of conflict is heating up, with Donald Trump talking about cutting all of Elon Musk's government contracts. I mean, Elon Musk made the vast majority of his money through government contracts. With Elon Musk having such a major role in the national security state, especially with Starlink and satellite communications, it would be advantageous for Russia to say, yeah, Elon, come on over here. If this MAGA civil war unfolds, and there was supposed to be a phone call, the phone call never happened. There was supposed to be a de-escalation of tensions, which you kind of saw from Elon Musk on Twitter last night. But there's a big possibility here that this is going to escalate. And listen. There's a big probability that we're going to see
this potentially play out here? Let's just be real, especially with just how crazy and turbulent 2025 has been, how unpredictable it has been. There's a possibility, as Newsweek is reporting, that Russia is offering political asylum to Elon Musk over the Trump feud. A Russian official said that the nation could be offering American billionaire Elon Musk political asylum over his fierce dispute with U.S. President Donald Trump. The U.S. President and the world's richest man have had a dramatic fallout, leaving many wondering what will come of the relationship. The comments come as tensions between Washington and Moscow remain high, as ceasefire talks for the Russian-Ukraine war have stalled. No, they're over. They're not happening. Vladimir Putin went to Ukraine. They had a 90-minute negotiation, right? That's because on the eve of that negotiations, the Ukrainians decided to do a major sabotage attack and violate a nuclear treaty with the Russians that had a lot of their nuclear arsenal planes just destroyed and bombed with these drone bombs. But when we look at the little progress that has been made here, there definitely isn't going to be any progress from here on out. Let's just be real with ourselves here. The Russians are answering back very seriously. We'll talk about the Russian answer in a little bit here, but Donald Trump specifically said something has happened to Vladimir Putin while talking about how he previously had a very good relationship with Vladimir Putin. Now, obviously, that's not the case now, and the Russians that are being obliterated by Elon Musk's Starlink tech. There's been a back and forth between Elon Musk and the Russians. The Russians are threatening to, of course, destroy his satellites because his satellites are being used for military purposes. The Ukrainians want to use it for offensive purposes. Some people say that they have already done that. Elon Musk has said that he will only allow them to use it for defensive purposes. The Ukrainians were mad at Elon Musk for that for some reason. Elon Musk, by the way, coming out and talking about the peace deal that he proposed, if the Ukrainians would have listened to him instead of attacking him many years ago when he did, the situation would have been way better off for them and Europe and the world, in my particular opinion. But we have the former Russian president, Medvedev, coming up and saying that Newsweek says he's kind of mocking them. In a way he is, but he's saying that he's offering to negotiate a peace deal between Elon Musk and Donald Trump. Now, you know, when the Russians are saying, hey, we'll broker a peace deal between you guys, as Trump hasn't been able to broker a peace deal between Russia and Ukraine here. There's still some questions about Donald Trump's knowledge and involvement in the potential Ukrainian sabotage operation. Some questions still remain there, and there's some mixed reporting about what's really going on here, as of course I think a lot of MAGA supporters and Donald Trump supporters are forgetting to look into the possibility of the maximum pressure campaign that Donald Trump could be utilizing right now against the Russians that of course have not really been playing ball with the latest negotiations. Of course, the Ukrainians didn't kind of abide by the negotiations the first time around. Now the Russians aren't. As right now, it looks like we are seeing the first type of retaliation from the Russians against the sabotage attacks that were done against them. As you are seeing right now, the waves of missiles and drones that were just being shot out last night against Kiev, many other cities around Ukraine, as we have seen one of the biggest military operations and bombardments so far of this conflict, as Vladimir Putin has declared Ukraine a terrorist state, and that, quote, he will treat them accordingly, as he described how some of his citizens were injured and had lost their lives in sabotage attacks that have happened inside of Russia by the Ukrainians. Now, as we're getting reports here, this was a massive strike. Some would say the biggest strike so far, as this was a large-scale drone and missile attack that's seen many parts of Ukraine just absolutely blanketed with munitions that were flying all throughout its country. As of course, this was Ukraine last night. Air raid alerts all throughout the night here, as missile defense systems were having a very difficult time keeping up with the barrage of missiles that were flying from Russian-held territories, as we were also getting reports of nuclear bombers, strategic bombers, flying overhead, specifically over Odessa and Kiev, as everyone was kind of waiting, seeing what were the latest type of weaponry systems that the Russians would be using here. Now, the Russians launched 407 drones and fired 45 missiles at Ukraine last night. There's reports that about 200 of those drones and 30 of those missiles were intercepted. And we're finding out that a lot of them weren't, as a lot of them were able to, of course, fly through the missile defense systems that weren't able to keep up with the barrage of missile systems. And we have seen this type of form of strategy by the Russians recently, which is worth considering and talking about here when it comes to this conflict, when it comes to this war, because when you look at air defense systems, they can only do so much. And when you send a barrage of multiple missiles, of multiple systems, all at once in the air here, the defense system is going to have to pick which one they're going to go after. There's also reports of the Russians putting up fake munitions out there in order to, of course, keep the missile defense systems occupied, and then when the fake explosives get hit, the fake missiles get hit, that's when they send in the real ones, and the defensive systems cannot keep up here. As Phoenix Ammunition keeps talking about, how the numbers game is not going to work out for Ukraine's favor, as Lockheed Martin can only produce around 35 to 40 Patriot interceptor missiles per month. Russia is building 60 to 7 Iskander ballistic missiles per month, and dozens of Caliber and other type of cruise missiles that are being fired into Ukraine right now. This is, as he says, a matter of logistics and industrial capacity here, as the Russians have shown themselves to have a far more cheaper and quicker production line with its military-industrial complex than, of course, the United States here. Now, the Ukrainians are still hitting back, specifically against a lot of the energy infrastructure of Russia, as they're trying to launch kind of a more sabotage type of operation against them in order to financially cripple them, as in Russia, a coal enrichment plant, one of the largest and most advanced enterprises in Russia, was just hit by some type of Ukrainian munition. Now, we got this reporting from the Atlantic here, which I think is a little bit hypocritical, because we're getting sources within the White House talking about how Donald Trump saw the sabotage attack by the Ukrainians as, quote, bad as. And it does make sense, especially when you see his kind of silence on the matter and on the situation, not really kind of speaking out against it, but probably something that he listen, let's just be real here. There's a big chance of probability he gave the silent go-ahead to. The Ukrainians said that they informed him. The White House said that he wasn't informed, but if he wasn't informed, Trump would be pissed. Like, why are you sabotaging my peace deals? Why are you escalating this conflict? As I think there's a different strategy at play here that I think is worth considering that a lot of people on the right aren't thinking about. And that is the fact that Donald Trump sees Putin as a player that doesn't want to negotiate, doesn't want to end this conflict, so he's saying, let's add maximum pressure and pain and suffering to the Russians to bring them to the negotiations table. That seems to have backfired, and the Russians declared Ukraine a terrorist state, and therefore the situation now will be escalating from here. The Atlantic writes, Ukraine got a major battle victory. Trump is not happy. Trump shouldn't be happy, because this kind of, like, destroys his negotiations, right? The peace deals are kind of done. They're defunct here. Trump told Zelensky and Putin that they're going to have to reach a peace deal themselves. And there was a bombshell phone call between the two, and he just walked away. Listen, Donald Trump walked away from the peace deals and negotiations here. Let's just be real with ourselves here. Now, the United States still is involved here and helping plot and orchestrate a lot of these sabotage attacks that Ukraine would not be able to do if it wasn't for direct U.S. intelligence help that I would say probably is also directing a lot of the sabotage and major actions here. Let's just be real with ourselves. Now, Donald Trump is the president of the United States. Is he just being kept out of the loop here? I don't think so. The Ukrainians just signed a major deal with the United States. Trump says, I'm washing my hands of this. I'm not helping you guys negotiate. I'm just gonna leave you guys to figure it out themselves here. And then, as Donald Trump just said, with the German political leadership at the Oval Office that he's with Ukraine.
Yeah, I'm with Ukraine. We just signed a big deal on rare earth with Ukraine, and I want to, you know what? I'm for stopping killing. Really.
Yeah, that's the big kind of disclaimer here that I think is the sentiment that we all need. But with Donald Trump saying, I'm not negotiating anymore, you're telling me with the attacks that have all the hallmarkers of U.S. intelligentsia on it, U.S. intelligentsia operations on it, that Donald Trump had no involvement here? I don't buy that. Now, Zelensky, he even came out, he said he wants to be the big Israel, and the ties between Donald Trump and Zelensky are expanding, are growing, and it wouldn't be advantageous for Zelensky to say, screw you, Trump, we're acting on our own. No, the United States still is heavily supporting Ukraine. We have entered a very critical stage of this conflict that a lot of people just do not understand, a situation that is far more dangerous and reckless, and I don't see Ukraine acting on their own here, and they haven't been acting on their own from the very beginning here. The United States is involved here. This could be just Donald Trump saying, yeah, let's just maximum pressure, let's see what's going to happen here. I see Donald Trump calling some of the shots here, and how could you not, especially with how involved all of us are in this perpetual conflict. And listen, Donald Trump is his own man, right? But at the same time, his behavior throughout the last few years should make you wonder what's really going on here, as I still see him being a major shot caller here. And when we look at the latest kind of escalations, when we look at the latest type of scenario that's kind of unraveling and unfolding here, there actually is a possibility where Elon Musk could be fleeing to Russia. This would be a huge significant gain, and I think the Russians are seeing, wow, look at this advanced space tech. We want this space nerd here with us. Listen, Elon Musk has been Elon Musk has been a major part in Ukraine's defense. Elon Musk probably no longer will be playing a major key role in setting up the Golden Dome, in setting up a lot of the kind of space tech adventures that a lot of them teased, a lot of them talked about. I mean, they talked about specifically exploring Mars and the type of stuff that they talked about with missile defense satellite type of systems that the Russians are building right now. The Russians, they're not just advancing in the Arctic, by the way. There's a lot of stuff heating up in the Arctic. It's not just the temperature, according to the Sunday Guardian. There could be a pole shift that probably is happening, and we're probably going into a mini ice age, by the way. That's just a separate topic that I just want to sprinkle in on there. Yeah, just polar shift. Oh yeah, mini ice age. Oh yeah. Trump has hinted at this too, as there are significant military installations being built in the Arctic. There's a lot of very rich natural resources. This is why Donald Trump wants to gobble up Canada and Greenland, because he sees it as one of the most important territories, especially with all the trade routes that go through it, as part of their larger national defense. This is why Donald Trump came to Canada recently and said, look, the Golden Dome, we could protect you too, if you become a state. Will they become a state? That's a question that a lot of people are kind of asking themselves here. The tensions are rising up in the Arctic, and especially if there's a pole shift, I mean, that's going to be game-changing. I do believe there's probably going to be a pole shift. I do believe there's going to be a mini ice age. I do believe that sometime in the near future, and it could be decades from now, who knows, but there's going to be something major. And I think securing a lot of territories for the United States for its national security, especially as this battle heats up and gets crazier and crazier and crazier, I think that would be advantageous for the United States here. What do you think? Will Russia get Elon? Let me know. Press 1 if you think Russia will get Elon. Press 2 if you think Russia will not get Elon with the way that things are unfolding. I'm curious to see what you guys have to say. Thank you to our sponsor today, Monetary Gold. We appreciate them. Check them out. And we appreciate you guys watching and subscribing to this independent media organization. I would be here.
Recently, someone said to me that they didn't think I was being fair.
did think that my pointing out that the things women do and say to men was good because it caused more issues than it solved. They even went so far as to say that I was the reason that men and women no longer talk to each other, no longer engage in any way. Well, to them I say, that's exactly why we need to point it out. Because it's gotten to the point that there is no point in having conversations. There is no point for men in trying to engage with women when they're going around saying things like,
are males really experiencing a loneliness epidemic, or are they just experiencing the consequences of their actions?
And this is exactly what I mean. It's exactly why we can't have nice things. Because women like this are running around spewing their toxicity and literally making things up in order to justify it. Making things up in order to cope with the reality that men are done and walking away from them. I mean, how can you have an adult conversation with someone or a group of someone's that does like what she's doing here? How can you have any conversation at all with a group that spews that level of toxicity and hatred? I mean, the answer to our question is neither. Because, and again, we keep telling women this over and over, but they can't seem to just get it through their heads. There is no male loneliness epidemic. In fact, men are thriving on their own. Men have found out that their lives are happier, healthier, and a hell of a lot less stressful without women than they ever have been or could be with them. But you see, women won't accept that. It doesn't fit their fields. And they're continuing to double down on that toxicity, hoping that somehow it's going to make men have a loneliness epidemic, which not only isn't going to work, but in reality causes more and more men to ask, why would we want to engage with women who take great joy, great delight, as this woman is doing, in thinking that men are lonely, unwanted, and unneeded? Who literally dance in pure delight at the thought that men are struggling and can't survive without them. Oh, sure, it makes the women feel good to hope for it, but make them a good person, someone you'd want to be around? Yeah, no. But that is exactly what women are doing, as this lovely young lady has shown in spades. But our little example doesn't stop there. Oh no, my friends.
Those actions being a refusal to evolve with women in current times.
Evolve with women in current times. Okay, you mean become totally delusional, self-absorbed, narcissistic, and downright nasty? Become so toxic, so insane with expectations and demands, while thinking that they have no obligations whatsoever in return? Well, yeah, I guess we're going to have to admit she's right. Men have refused to evolve like women have. Then again, which is what women are telling themselves, no, it makes you an arrogant ass, and men know that, which is why they've chosen not to evolve like women have.
As well as a refusal to let go of the archaic expectations of patriarchy.
Oh, you mean like paying for dates, opening doors, providing and protecting. You know, all those things that women have refused to let go of, all while claiming they want to be treated as equals. Funny how that evolution and change that they go on and on about only applies when it suits them, only when it works in their favor. Otherwise, it's let's keep the things the way they were in the 1950s. Again, we see how women think, the double standards that they wallow in. The hypocrisy of it all is astounding. But then again, we're talking about a group that actually believes there is and always has been a patriarchy. When in fact, not only isn't there one, there never actually has been one. At least not in the way they claim there was. It's a belief based completely on lies and falsehoods. Ones that have long been disproven, yet women cling to them like a newborn baby to a bottle. The phony wage gap, the lie that women couldn't have bank accounts, the list goes on and on. Yet when you give them actual facts that easily refute their claims, their beliefs, they flat out refuse to accept them, refuse to even acknowledge them, refuse in most cases to even listen to them. Which again brings us back to why would men, or any sane person for that matter, want to talk to or engage with a person or group of persons that think that way? Much like the male loneliness epidemic, it's all made-up fantasy. Fantasy that women have created to justify their hatred and mistreatment of men.
Okay, no, but can we talk about this one, y'all?
Well, we just did, and let's be honest, any further conversation would be pointless, because women aren't ready to have it yet. Women have shown time and again that it's they who lack the emotional maturity to have a real, fact-based adult conversation without it devolving into them